Hi everyone, this is Clint from Persuasive Evangelism, and today we're going to go over this book, Raised by the Third Day. It's edited by Michael Licona and David Beck. It was recently published, and it's in honor of Gary Habermas. Gary Habermas is one of the top scholars for the resurrection of Christ, and it's in his honor since he's made such a big influence. So all these apologists, theologians, and others have written essays on what Gary Habermas covers, which includes evidence for the resurrection of Christ and the Shroud of Turin and near-death experiences. So it's very interesting. A couple of the essays were really in-depth, like philosophy, were a little over my head, but most of them I really enjoyed and got a lot of good information on them. So one of the articles is about Gary Habermas's minimal facts approach for the evidence for the resurrection of Christ. And he lists the facts that over 90% of all scholars believe are true, whether Christian, non-Christians, and so on. And those four facts are: fact 1, Jesus died by crucifixion. Fact 2, Jesus' disciples believe that he rose and appeared to him. Fact 3, the enemy of the church, Paul, said that he saw Jesus and became a Christian, and for the rest of their life he preached the good news. And then James, the brother of Jesus, was a skeptic and didn't believe Jesus was the Messiah until he died and appeared to him, and then he became a leader of the church. So those four facts are his minimal facts approach, and those facts fit with Jesus dying and being raised. That's how it would explain those facts. If you don't believe in the resurrection, then what theory explains those facts? That Jesus was died and crucified, then the apostles believed and lived their lives that Jesus rose from the dead, whether they were martyred, thrown in jail, attacked, and so on. And then the enemy of the church, Paul, said he saw the risen Jesus and changed his life, and instead of persecuting the church, he became a Christian and was persecuted. And then Jesus' brother, who didn't believe his little brother or his big brother was the Messiah, his whole life was changed when he saw Jesus resurrected after he was dead. So that's the minimalist facts approach. The only critique that he had for that approach is that there's other facts that maybe not the 90% of all scholars believe, but he says, all the facts put together, put a whole picture, a stronger argument. So that's a great article. I like the two articles on the Shroud of Turin. I didn't know a lot of information. The first article talks about the history of the Shroud and when the research was done. Most of the research was done in the 70s, and then they did a carbon dating in the 80s. Only the Pope can allow for the Shroud to be tested, so they haven't had any new, with today's technology, they can't test it. But he lists 24 data points they found, such as there's a negative image in the Shroud, there's evidence for it being 3D, and all this information. Now, the carbon dating listed it as being dated in the 1200s. So then a lot of people said, well, it's a fake. It can't, because it's not 2,000 years old. But there's no theory that can cover those 24 data points. Whether they say, well, somebody painted it, that still doesn't cover all the 24 data points they found on the Shroud. So it doesn't. No one knows how it was created. He did say, if it was true that this Shroud covered Christ, and he said, and then he came alive, they said a burst of radiation could create that image, and that radiation could change the carbon dating as well, the material. So if it did really happen, that would be one way. The other article was written by someone that was actually on the team in the 1970s, a photographer that worked on the Shroud. And when the carbon dating came back saying it was only created in the 1200s, everyone was shocked, because no one knows how it was created. And basically in the Middle Ages, or 1200 years, in the 1200s, there's like a negative image that they just noticed when they first took a picture of the Shroud in 1898. Like, how would they even know to create a negative image and all this information? But he goes, then they found out, one theory is that the carbon dating was just in one little part of the shroud, and they said it could be the shroud, was burnt and so on, and it was repaired several times. So they said the theory is that that's part of the carbon dating was when they repaired it, probably in the 1200s. They looked at it because they still had a little samplings of it, and they saw evidence that it was fixed, and that sampling was part of where it was fixed with new weaving in it and so on. So the Shroud of Turin isn't like a life or death on the evidence for resurrection of Jesus, but it's interesting. It's there, and no one knows how it was created, and it would be nice if they could do new testing, because most of the testing was done in the 70s. But especially with today's technology, to find more information, answers on it. But that was interesting. Then there's Mike Licona did a great article on Paul and how he, history of Paul and the evidence for Paul and how he works with evidence for the resurrection of Christ. That was fascinating. And then Frank Turk had a great article near the end of the book. Basically, some of the information was like the dating of the Gospels and just all the evidence for the Gospels and so on. But yeah, this is a great book. I totally recommend it. I read it pretty quickly, and it just came out about a month ago. So that's all. I'm currently near the Longview Public Library, and over there is the R.A. Long Park, also known as the Civic Circle, and over there is the Monticello Hotel. So take care, everyone. Goodbye. God bless.